Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly,
he's our
dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and sisters. I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's fall. I decided to put on some African fall colors. And we certainly need to brighten up today. The Atlanta Falcons lost again. You know, I'm from Atlanta. The Falcons, that's my home team. But I don't want to change the tone of today's conversation talking about those dirty birds. We thought they were going to pull it off. But I hope that you're doing well. I trust and pray that on this, the first Sunday in October, that you had a great communion fellowship, and that you listened to the preach word, or you preached the word, and that you're the better for it. So we thank God today that you are here with us. I'm so delighted to have our CFO, Dr. Victor Taylor, to spend some time with me and with us today. We're going to talk about a lot. He's going to share again what he does and how it impacts the church. And you'll be able to put some questions in the chat room if you have any, and I'll share those with him. But first, let me greet our senior bishop, Lawrence L. Reddick III, and Mrs. Wendy Jones Reddick. Let me greet the new chair of the College of Bishops, Bishop James B. Walker, and Mrs. Dolores Walker. In fact, I want you to take a listen to this, and then I'll come back and greet the entire College of Bishops.
What we need in God's church is spirit-filled leadership. Spirit-filled leadership means leadership that gets the vision from on high. You don't get a ground-level vision from spirit-filled leadership. You get an elevated vision. God meets Moses on Mount Horeb. Somebody needs to hear me say that one more time.
We congratulate Bishop Walker as the new chair of the College of Bishops. You can go to the CME Church website to view the entire address of him accepting this leadership position in our church. Let me greet the College of Bishops and their spouses. Bishop Walker is also the chair of the CTI committee. And let me greet my bishop, who is the vice chair, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr., and Dr. Louise Baker Brown, who celebrated a birthday on yesterday. Happy birthday to you, Dr. Louise. You look so beautiful. Dr. Louise is my Instagram friend, among the first lady of our 6th Episcopal District. And I enjoy her wonderful post of food and other things that she shares with us. And so happy birthday, Dr. Louise. As you know, there are a number of celebrations this month, a number of observations, including breast cancer and domestic violence awareness month. And I trust and pray that all of our churches are on board with bringing a greater light and understanding to these issues that impact both men and women in our church, but especially our women and our sisters. And I want to share just a moment.
Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the disease kills tens of thousands of women in the U.S. every year. But Black women face a greater risk of dying from the disease. KCTV5's Carolyn Long explains why there is growing concern that that risk could become worse.
My treatment was very challenging.
Phyllis Garnett is the first to admit breast cancer treatment, several rounds of chemo every 3 weeks, is no joke.
My bones would hurt, my muscles would hurt. I would be so fatigued. I think fatigue is just an understatement because I could hardly function.
Nonetheless, Phyllis keeps her spirits up, choosing to adopt the mantra, faith over fear.
I'm doing really well now, still going through, healing and have side effects, but hey, this too shall pass, you know?
I think Phyllis's strength and resilience as she continues to recover and move forward after her breast cancer experience is a really powerful message.
Dr. Stephanie.
This is very personal to me. Just over a year ago, my beautiful 87-year-old mother, Dolores Hughes, longtime member of the West Side Community CME Church, went to reach for something in the cabinet and felt something that did not feel right. After going to her doctors, they discovered that she had breast cancer. And now, a year later, through a treatment of chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation, she is doing well, doing better. She decided to put faith over fear. She decided that she wanted to live. And how do I know my mother's doing well? Because when I visit her, she always fits her son his favorite meal, fish and grits, fried fish and grits. And so I thank God for my mother. I have a better understanding of what breast cancer awareness means, and all of us in the church should be engaged in making sure that we bring more attention to that. God bless the West Mitchell Street family as well. Yesterday, during our 21 days of prayer, we prayed for breast cancer survivors and those who are battling it right now. So I thank God for that. I just wanted to share that with you because I thought it was important that we do that. And also, this is Clergy Appreciation Month. Just share with your pastor, clergy, a text and or an encouraging scriptural word. It will go a long way. And I am so glad that I work at a church, that I serve a church that encourages the pastor throughout the year. And lastly, next Sunday, my conversation will be with 4 of our Episcopal candidates, our sister candidates, Dr. Benicia Burns, presiding elder Diana Castile, newly minted Dr. Cassandra Keys, and Dr. Denise Anders Modest will all join me next Sunday for a number of conversations about the church and the future of our church. So you will not want to miss that. But today, I am so delighted to bring to you someone that is no stranger to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. He even pulled out his general officer's jacket to share with us today. I'm delighted to greet and bring back again. This is the second time on Conversations, our CFO and General Secretary of Department of Finance and Investments, otherwise known as DFI, Dr. Victor Taylor. Brother Victor, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Skip. It's so good to be with you. And that was an extraordinary array that you just brought forward. And I appreciate it greatly.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Glad to have you on. Again, the first time you were on, we learned a little bit about your background and how you got to this. But today we're hitting it right with the nuts and bolts of exactly what you do as a CFO. What does the department do, and how does it serve our church? At the bottom, you will see from the discipline, the language that comes out of what takes place in your department. And so there are people who are watching who may be very familiar with what you do. But I'm hoping today that there are people who are watching who may not understand the report that you published in the Christian Index. I think it's the statement of activities and current. They may not understand what kind of investments. What do you do as a CFO? So, let's begin there. Let's talk about your position as a CFO and a general secretary, and just tell us a little bit about what you do in that capacity.
Thank you, Skip. Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and to all of the College of Bishops, certainly the senior bishop and Mrs. Reddick, who you greeted, and our new chair of the College of Bishops, Bishop James Walker, and my chair, Bishop Williams, and my vice chair, Bishop Kenneth Carter. Skip, everything really starts with the people. You look at the numbers on the page and everything, but those numbers are represented by folks. And I think that the CME Church has shown itself as having, as Bishop Eli Brown said, a goodly heritage. And it's one which is worth fighting for. The people of the CME Church are worth fighting for. And so we're always recognizing that those monies which come in are paid into the church, and they're paid by the local churches. Dr. Sylvia Falk said famously, if it doesn't happen at the local level, it doesn't happen. So we really want to represent for the people, and we want to have, as we call it, at all times, to put integrity, trust, and then spices at all times of innovation into the work that we do on finance. So I've been in the financial arena for a long time, and I've said that what I wanted to do is bring elements of best practices, and those best practices sometimes come from corporate, or back, or also go back the other way. So we really look to do in many cases that which amounts to creating or getting our own straw, because it was Bishop Gilmore who famously said that my predecessor acted in the way that the children of Israel did, that they weren't told by Pharaoh to build bricks without straw, but they were told more to get their own straw. So a lot of times we find that that's what we need to do, because our principal interest is in the sustainability of the church when it comes to those resources, and we think that that's the best way to act in a way of faith with the people, and in the trust that they have invested with us.
So walk us through the process, if you will, in terms of your department receiving the apportionments, the finances from the church. Once those are received, what happens, Victor? Talk about where does the money go? How is it utilized? Is it spread out? Is it placed in different accounts? Can you just kind of walk us through that process?
Yes. So again, using innovation, we are increasingly moving toward more electronic means of receiving funds, so as to get them into the accounts sooner, and also to make it less possible that checks are lost and things like that. And I think we'll be going more and more electronic. So the money does go into our bank accounts first in terms of apportionments. Of course, we receive much more than apportionments. For example, we receive a lot in disaster relief funds. We receive money for various conferences, right? Unity Summit registration for the connection, for the CYYAC, the Connectional Youth and Adult Conferences, for General Conference. So there's any different areas that we might receive funds, and those funds all go into either general account or CYYAC or Unity Summit. So we try to segregate funds to the place that they go, lay ministry, for example, or Graham Webb Scholarship, for example. So we segregate those funds so that, we really have a good knowledge of what was general funds and what was specific to a particular department. Then moving forward from there, we make disbursements in accordance with the budget, and oftentimes with certain principles, many times that are either best practices or ones that we have developed over time in terms of making disbursements. And again, we try to make those electronic as much as possible. Sometimes in reimbursements, right?
Right.
And we use an electronic system for that. And sometimes it's paying a bill, like our American Express bill that we're paying a bill. And but most of the time it's for things that are specific in the budget with regard to payroll, with regard to budgets, like 11th Episcopal District, 10th Episcopal District, Jamaica, Haiti, etc. So we make disbursements in accordance with the budget, which has been voted by the General Conference in terms of what those budgets are to be. Phillips School of Theology, all of our colleges, right? Payne College, Texas College, Miles, and Lane. So all of our colleges and institutions of higher learning as well. We see that as essential that we get those resources to them.
That's incredible. So is it a large department? How many people do you have working to manage all of what you've described?
Oh, there's a lot going on. So we have persons which are full-time, which are, I think we have 2 full-time, 2 part-time, and 2 contractors. So, and then we have, you know, our leadership, especially the College of Bishops, and certainly to my chair, my vice chair. And then we have people who work with us, part of our old guard, or we formerly call SEALs, that work with us, just in terms of advice. And then all of our incredible people. I'm glad you asked about it, because the people that I work with are just golden, and they're available really at any time. It's amazing. I think that many of them don't sleep. My wife certainly works with me and is there for comfort and aid. And then I really appreciate what is done by our director, which is Sharonda Greenlee, and she does just a massive amount. We'll get into a lot of that that's coming up in terms of really creating a tremendous platform for what we're projecting and getting out, and even for example, right now with regard to financial literacy and what we've done in the past, like in the PPP program and messaging. And then there is Attorney Catherine Belger, who does and keeps us grounded in terms of all of our pursuits. Many of them entail, you know, various legal considerations, and I will often say, if she can't really advise us on it, it's probably not legal. So we have tremendous prayer warrior in Reverend Lynn Walker, who I appreciate so greatly, and she just keeps everything in a proper order. And then CME TV, mainly with Nicholas Smith, and all the things that he's done, because CME TV is under the Department of Finance and Investments as well. So our people are integral, and all the rest of the people of CME TV, which we have tremendous numbers of them. And Lena Hall, who has kept our records in the past, she'll be retiring at the end of the year, and then being picked up now by Dee Dee, who is now going to pick up in her place in terms of maintaining our books and working with our records on an ongoing basis. So we've got a lot of folks who are just committed to the work and dedicated to DFI, and we couldn't do it without them. There's no question about it.
That's incredible, and I'm glad you did share with us the members of your staff that assist you. Where is the Department of Finance Investment physically located? Is it in Memphis? Is it in the headquarters, or is it in a separate facility?
That's a great question, because I often say, when you see me, you see the work.
Right.
Because increasingly we have put things on the cloud, and that's where we're headed in our securitization. We have a program which we call SAFE, and it stands for security, accessibility, functionality, and entitlement. And so we are essentially digitizing some 30 plus years of work. And a lot of people don't realize that there are some best practices to be put in place with regard to securitization of your data. And those include that at some point you need to archive things. So you may have, for example, at a major firm that I work, where I can delete my emails, but those emails, I guarantee you, still exist.
Right.
And they're still somewhere, on a database and on the cloud. So do you want to have a system where whoever's in charge can determine what the data is, who maybe even comes on board years after the data was created? No. So we are creating also, best practices for that safe system, which will really allow us to be able to sustain what I call institutional memory.
That's good to know. So I want to walk through a couple of things with you, Victor. For those of you who have your discipline, Chapter 45 details the General Department of Finance and Investments, and it gives you quite a lengthy discourse of all of the areas, excuse me, that the department manages. And of course, Victor manages as our CFO. So our fiscal year is from January to December. All right. So next year we're in a general conference. Okay. What happens when a new budget is approved? Does that budget replace immediately the outgoing budget, or do we wait until January of the following year in order to enact the new budget?
Oh, wow. Oh my, that is just a tremendous question, because we have a system where the budget which is voted on operates on a calendar year.
Okay.
However, immediately following General Conference, there can be additional new non-budgeted considerations. And so this is extremely important. The CME Church, as far back as I can remember, and I've been involved at the general level since 1986, always has substantial non-budgeted expenses.
Okay. For example, just give us an example, Victor.
Well,
what would
for
be
example, in 2006, the General Conference voted to create a new department at the General Conference. That department and the expenses of that department started immediately after the General Conference, which were not in the budget because the budget is on calendar year.
Right.
So in 2006, we had a General Conference, and let's say it closed July 1st. The expenses started July 2nd, including the payment of the salary, for example, and the budget of a new general officer, which was not in the 2006 budget.
Right.
The budget voted at the General Conference didn't start until 2007. So what was that? That's a non-budgeted expense, correct? Or an unfunded mandate, some people call. So those things always exist. So what we did was we put in place really a system for dealing with non-budgeted or unfunded mandates on a regularized basis. And I know that's allowing me to really get into that subject. Let me know if you don't want me to stray into that area. But we put into a system that allowed us to deal with that on an ongoing basis. And that's really involves the sustainability aspect that I talked about in terms of really building up what we call endowment assets, which generate a very substantial, and I can get into some of the numbers, dividends and interest, which allow us to really cover most, if not all, of our non-budgeted expenses. In fact, that number over the last 5 years was about $868,000 generated to deal with these types of non-budgeted expenses. So immediately following General Conference, it could be positive or it could be negative. We already know a lot of new expenses that will occur. For example, people will retire, right? The people who are retiring are not included. We have a General Conference next year. The people who are retiring are not included in that budget that was passed that goes through the end of calendar year 2022. So
they're not included.
They are not included. They're not included. Well, I mean, they will be paid. They will be paid. You understand? It's a non-budgeted expense. It is an unfunded mandate. Okay. So that's just a great question. But those obligations often can start immediately. Most of them start in January, but many of them start immediately following the General Conference. And I hope those are good examples.
Yeah, those were, and I appreciate the clarity in that. I want to shift for a minute and talk about investments. Yes. And in terms of the CME Church's investment philosophy under your leadership. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that, and how are our investments handled? Do we have a separate broker? Do we deal with a firm? Just for the novice CME who doesn't know how you manage investments, would you share that with us, please?
Thank you again, Dr. Mason, for that question. And we've had a varied approach. I already mentioned dividends and interest, for example. So when we're looking for dividends and interest, we're looking at things like bonds and preferred stocks, which have, for example, a lesser volatility, but have a very predictable cash flow attached to them in terms of generating dividends and interest, which is extremely important. I just pointed out because those are used to smooth out these types of non-budgeted expenses, unfunded mandates, for example. So that's very crucial. And then, so that might be in a total portfolio of $7 million. That might be $2 million. $2.5 million. That might be $2.5 million. Then we have a equity portfolio. So the equity portfolio is built based on portfolio theory, best practices over many periods of time. It's based on what we call full market cycles.
Okay. So
full market cycles are 3 to 5 years, right? So various things happen. For example, in the stock market that we know about, various things happen.
Right.
So we look at full market cycles, so not the ups and downs necessarily every day, but how things are trending really over long periods of time. That's been the approach that we have used. So long about, and I actually gratified for the question because I started working with my predecessor, Dr. Joseph C. Neal Jr. Back in 1993, and we started with about $200,000 that was invested in the account. That's now the 7 million plus. Dr. Neal tells me when he got in office back in 1982, he inherited $20,000
Wow.
in the account.
Mm.
When I got in office, I inherited the total net assets of about 5 million. We've grown those to 7 million over the last several years. So clearly, it's been a productive pursuit to use modern portfolio theory. And what we have done is really pair that with part of the sustainability factor that we need in order to smooth our budget without our operational needs that we have, that I call these non-budgeted expenses and unfunded mandates, without having to go back to the church and ask for an increase.
Okay.
What it used to happen is we would have something to happen. I don't know, call it the headquarters.
Right.
Call it Texas College. And what we would do is we would go back and add those to the budget, essentially to ask the local church to fund these unfunded mandates, these non-budgeted expenses.
Right.
So the paradigm shift that we have been able to put in is to be able to deal with, for the most part, the non-budgeted expenses that we have, which are really not temporary, they're permanent, and the unfunded mandates. So, but that's been the approach that we've used, that multi-pronged approach of equities, as well as what we call fixed income.
Yeah.
And that we've paired those together for purposes of investment. One thing I'd like to clear up, with your permission, that's often asked is if we are invested in prison stocks. We have never invested in prison stocks. We never have in the past, do not presently, and will not in the future done anything with prison stocks. So, and then in addition, we have, through our chair, we will be developing more transparent investment policy for the church to see on a regularized basis.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I think that would help tremendously, because I think people generally don't know, and sometimes they don't know because they don't ask, or they don't have the information, or it's not clear, or there's conjectures, that there's room, they just don't know. So I'm really glad to have this conversation with you to kind of clear up some matters as it relates to what your department does, what's in the discipline. Would you say the CME Church is fiscally sound? I hope I get a positive response to that.
The CME Church, okay, so there's multiple levels, right? So the CME Church, definitely in terms of what we handle, is very sound. Yeah, and our credit rating would be, I think, quite good. We pay, for example, we pay our American Express, we pay it every month. We get tremendous things that come at us, which are, not in the budget, and we've been able to meet those obligations. I did want to go back though and just mention, Skip, in addition, because we do keep our dominant investment portfolio at the firm which I work, and I've worked wherever it has been that I've worked, because I've been able to get access to, C-suite access for our church and other CME entities, which allow them to really pay substantially less than they might otherwise, while getting, obviously, services at a level where at least I'm able to see on a regularized basis what is going on, but I am not compensated in any way on the portfolio. However, since it's at the firm where I work, I'm able to keep tabs on it and also to make sure that we are getting the best benefits that are available to the CME Church, because this is my church going back to, my grandmother from 1891.
Wow. So in a corporate entity like the CME Church, is it not uncommon to have a CFO who works for a firm that manages and invests, and you say you're not getting compensated? Is it not a conflict of interest? Just talk about that and clear that up for anybody who thinks, well, he works for this firm and they're invested. Isn't this a conflict of interest? Just, share with us on that thought for a moment, please.
Yeah, sure. So we're required to go through a very rigorous conflict of interest examination. I'm a member of FINRA, under the Financial Industry National Regulatory Authority, and also subject to SEC. And even though I'm wearing kind of brownish orange color, I'm not interested in like orange is the new black. So we have very substantial requirements in terms of assuring that there is no conflict of interest, and also, with the CME Church and the College of Bishops or whatever, to assure that any conflicts that might be there, that we've cleared those hurdles. So as I indicated, in terms of the benefits that we're able to get, far be it from being something which hampers the church, it actually broadens the opportunities for the church by assuring really that we get the best services that we can get without really having to pay as much as we might pay if we were just coming in from not having a relationship with a person like myself.
Right. The oversight for this department is the Commission on Connectional Budget. And I think you mentioned that Bishop Williams is the chair, Sylvester Williams, and Bishop Carter, of course, is the vice chair. You work very closely with them?
Yes, I do. Now, the Bishop Carter was the prior chair. Mm-hmm. And this year, Bishop Williams became the chair. We work very closely with our chairs. They are the chair of the Standing Committee of the Department of Finance and Investment. The Budget Commission is actually a different entity, which is also under Bishop Williams. So it is also under Bishop Williams. But we work very closely with our chair in terms of the regular order. And assuring that that's the way that the College of Bishops wants to be sure that the college is really kept informed as much as possible, not just from the Joint Officer, but also with a member of the college.
So the Budget Commission is actually in progress now, in terms of preparing a proposed budget for General Conference.
For General Conference, correct.
Do they receive a tremendous amount of input from you on it, or your silent partner?
Oh my goodness, you're coming up with these great questions. So I have just recently engaged with Bishop Williams in terms of that type of discussion, that we can operate as much as possible on the same page with regard to the General Conference, because that commission's report goes to the Standing Committee on Department of Finance and Investments,
right?
Which of course I have to work very closely with them as well, and I get a lot of questions about it and what have you, just in terms of the Budget Commission report itself. So we want to work as closely as possible so that we can be together, going into the General Conference.
Yeah.
That has hasn't happened before. I'm not criticizing because we're always looking to advance things, and we think that that will be quite an advance that we can perhaps deal with some things, so as many questions and whatever would be able to be answered in the standing committee at General Conference on a very close. I mean, we're working all kinds of hours a lot of times. So that I think that's a very important thing. It's very important to work together.
Yeah. Donald Letcher said, just curious, with this being the case with unbudgeted mandate, would it not be better or to the church's advantage to move from a calendar year to a fiscal year, July to July? What are your thoughts on that?
For better to the local churches? Is that the local churches?
No. In terms of the question I asked you earlier, General Conference with the new budget does not begin until the following January, but you are able to manage or deal with unbudgeted mandates that may come after the General Conference. So he's asking, would it be better for us to move from July to July as opposed to a calendar year?
That's a great question, because I believe that it used to be different, and I would have to find out what the reasons were for moving it.
Right.
But that would appear to be something which could be a resolution, because many corporations, of course, do not operate on calendar year, correct?
Yeah.
So I'd have to give that some thought, but that's a very good question.
Yeah, I thought it was a good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
So
I'd have to give that some thought, and also inquire about the reasons for having changed it in the past.
So I want to shift and ask this question, and you can answer it. You might decide to pass. I don't know. But there was some discussion. There's been some discussion about the pension fund and investment. Do you manage the pension fund as our?
I do.
You do.
I do not. I do not.
Okay. So why not?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The church, I believe in the CME church.
Yeah.
And the CME church, started a pension fund when it was, by all rights, many ministers, pastors were not having anything when they, other than Social Security.
Right.
And so that was a very essential thing to do, and it had something most prominent in it, which was something known as the gift fund. And the gift fund provided money for people who had not even contributed. Their churches hadn't contributed. At some point, I think it was through the finance committee, when I was on the finance committee.
Right.
In 1990 or some point, that we made it mandatory that the local churches even pay, for example, the current 12% of the retirement money.
Right.
It was not previously mandated that the local churches pay that money. So historically, it's been in and through personnel services.
Okay.
I think that I operate in what is in the best interest of the CME church.
Okay.
Without form or favor. So when I'm asked about various aspects and best practices, I give my honest opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So my honest opinion is that there are better practices, and this is not a secret, because I've shared this information with Dr. Davis, who is over the personal services.
And Dr. Davis will be coming on the show sometime soon as well.
Great.
Yeah.
So I've shared what I think are best practices. Do I believe that in order to operate in even what I think are best practices, that it has to be under DFI? I do not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's required.
Okay.
But I do think that changes absolutely can be made, which are in the best interest of the CME Church and the participants in the retirement fund. Right. So I think it's that thing that I talked about earlier, working together.
Right.
The way we worked together on many things in the past, like the 403B. So there are many aspects where we can work together, and if that's the case, and it wouldn't necessarily be just because I'm CFO, but I do have a long tenure in the investment markets of more than 40 years.
Thank you. So obviously you've shared some thoughts about best practices for that.
Absolutely.
We know that conversation is going to come up. We know it's going to be a general conference conversation, I'm sure. A couple of things. Would you talk about the one of the items in the discipline is that the Department of Finance and Investment, in consultation with the College of Bishops, shall explore alternate sources of revenue to aid in underwriting the operational costs of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. This is for those wonderful churches that are struggling to pay their apportionments, to support the good work of the CME Church. Is our model outdated? And what are we doing? What are you doing? What is the college doing to provide other streams of revenue to support and take? And I shouldn't use the word burden, because I think we have to be responsible to support our church, our denomination. But certainly there has to be some other means and methods and ways. And would you tell us, about some?
Oh my God! How much time do we have? How much time do we have?
Let me do
oh
a disclaimer.
My gosh!
Let me do a disclaimer. Dr. Taylor and I did not talk before this show. He tried to reach me.
That is great.
And I had to travel out of town. So he's hearing some of these questions from me for the first time, but certainly he's heard these questions before. It's not the first time.
My. Oh my.
But Victor, tell us. So, and I think that's
in terms of, it's great. In terms of sustainability, there are two principal considerations.
Okay.
One is, how can we save from what we're already doing, right? Some people just think cut, but how can we sustain for what we're already doing, and how can we leverage from what we already have? And then of course there's the aspect of cut. We cut the budget. Okay, we cut the budget. In fact, the total amount in terms of dollars that we cut the budget from when I came into office. And I'm going to claim that because I was on the Finance Standing Committee on Finance in 2014, but that total from 2015 through the end of 2022 is $5.8 million.
Okay.
We cut $5.8 million
from the budget.
Now, in total, if you take what it was in 2014 to what it was in 15 and all the way through 22, it's $5.8 million. Now, in terms of underwriting, other expenses that we know we have.
Right.
I talked about that already in terms of $868,000 that we generated over the last 5 years in terms of dividends and interest.
Right.
Now, what was put in place was we spend, all this different money, right? And we found, well, we're never getting points.
Mm-hmm.
So we put in a system where we at least could start to accumulate points, and we've accumulated more than 5 million total in points during my tenure. Now, this is where
clarify points for those who may not know what you're speaking of when you say points.
Okay, like American Express.
Right.
It's one of my principal ones. Delta is another one. A new one we're putting in place right now is Marriott.
Okay.
So in terms of accumulating points, those are worth tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $50,000 to a church. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but that's $50,000 we were never getting.
Right.
We're spending the same money. It's the money I'm talking about sustainability, right? We're spending the same money, but we put that in place. Building an endowment, right? I said when my predecessor came in office, $20,000. I came in as $5 million out of 7. Building an endowment can get us ultimately to the place that Bishop Bass talked about at the 2018 General Conference from the College of Bishops in the Episcopal Address. Eventually, where perhaps we would not have to make general assessments. That doesn't mean you don't pay assessment. It just means you don't pay them to the general church. Maybe you pay them into your annual conference. Maybe you pay them into your local church.
Mm-hmm.
To build up your local and your regional resources. Those will always be essential, but we do want to make it possible. And we think that cutting that $5.8 million, of course, was integral. But in addition, the points that we generate, and what about when something happens, something crazy? I don't know, a pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, that happened last year. So I talk about my people, especially when you talk about Sharonda Greenlee and Attorney Belger.
Mm-hmm.
They stood up immediately and found an incredible program, which was nationally advertised as it turned out, but we were on top of that immediately to help our local churches and even our CME entities, and we helped them to raise more than $5 million from something that happened that just was no one expected. More than $5 million that we helped them to raise. I can remember I called some of the people that are in charge.
Okay.
And I said, drop everything. Do this now.
Okay.
The CME Church itself got more than $700,000, more than $710,000 actually, in payroll protection money.
Okay.
So we think that this is quite a bond. This is quite a commitment to our local churches. We work directly, Attorney Belger, Sharonda Greenlee, they work directly with local churches, with entities of the CME Church to make sure that not only that they got access to those resources, but then they also applied for second round, some of them,
mm-hmm. when
the second round came up this year.
Right.
And then to make sure that they applied for forgiveness of the same.
Oh,
so I think that as much an extent as possible in terms of cutting budget, in terms of raising from what we already have, in terms of points, in terms of when something incredible happens, that there's opportunity in terms of the dividends and interest.
Okay.
And then, of course, we want to further leverage what you mentioned that's in the discipline by eventually getting into pools of grants and corporate sponsorships, which some of those things we're actually working on today with some of our CME schools.
Yeah.
to get access to other means which are not necessarily traditional functions of what would have been a Joint Secretary of Finance and Investments, but certainly would be a function of a CFO.
Mm-hmm. Dexter Harris asks, what are we considering an investment when it comes to digital currency? That put a smile on your face.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. I don't know how far I should go with this, but how should I characterize it? Digital has been for a long time what I refer to as casino.
Okay.
Now, when I say casino, I'm not saying that people don't go to the casino and win. People do.
Yeah. A few CMEs probably too, you know.
My wife once won.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we've been there a lot, but one time she did win. So casino investing is not the same as portfolio theory investing.
Okay.
Portfolio theory investing is where you say, well, I've looked at the last 100 years, and in any 10-year time period, any 10 years you want to take, you made money. Okay. For example, that's portfolio theory.
Yeah.
Casino is more like, I don't know if you ever heard of tulip bulbs. At one time, some people, I don't know if it was Denmark, what was the country? Some person traded their house for a black tulip bulb, and that still hasn't recovered from centuries ago. So remember, what were those things? My assistant made so much money. What do you call those? Those tie-dye things? Well, no, those little Tyco little things. Anyway, people were buying them for $1 and selling them for $20, $50, $100 right away and stuff like that. That's casino.
Yeah.
And now they're worth nothing. So at one point, that's where digital currency was. I think it's changing now.
Right.
And perhaps it's going to become more like something like gold. Mm-hmm. Where gold has, no more gold is really being made. I mean, you got to mine it somewhere or something like that. And I think that's what they're trying to get to with the digital currency. And I think even someone in the United States is talking about establishing a digital kind of currency. In terms of investing, though, it's really not at the stage of what I look or have looked at, or what we have looked at for the CME portfolio. We've looked at things that have long history, like the CME Church.
Yeah.
Long history, because we're looking for sustainability and not for some sensational overnight returns.
So what I'm hearing is that, and it goes back to that question I asked you about our investment. We lean more towards a conservative sort of investment. You're not doing Bitcoin and some of these other kinds of things.
Yeah, or some people might want to, buy line farms or something. I mean, there's any number of things that can work, and they can work tremendously. I'm not saying that they don't, but no, we have had, yes, more conservative in terms of long established track records, right, where you are rewarded from your your consistency and your perseverance.
Yeah. So no investment in cannabis, and listen.
Cannabis is one of those casino type things.
Yes. Yeah, casino type things. Folks are making a whole lot of money. I know church folks are different, but still I had to, put that question. So Victor, what would you say would be the misnomer or misunderstanding about your department? What do people think they know and they don't know, as it relates to your department and the work that you do?
I really think, Skip, that one of the biggest things, the biggest things are some of the things we already mentioned, that it really is essential, so far from what I've seen and everything that I've gleaned in the department, to be able to get our own straw.
Okay.
That's been a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at something like getting your own straw, you take something like CME TV, right?
Yeah.
So you take something like CME TV that people have, apparently a lot of people, not understood what it's doing. So CME TV, if I could take this occasion, is launched what will ultimately be a couple decades worth of a video archive. And they're making it available, announcing it on your show, just for you, Dr. Mason, that you can enjoy your favorite CME experiences. Now you can watch CME conferences, events, worship experiences, and more anytime, anywhere. What's that sound like? Kind of like Netflix, right?
That's huge, Victor. I mean, given the fact that CME TV has covered these conferences for the last umpteen years, and now you're able to make those shows digitally available. Is that what you're working on?
Yeah, they are there. It stood up. You go to victortaylor.com, you click on the CME TV network, and right there for $39.99 only, $39.99 for a year, and I think for at least the next couple of weeks.
So what's the access again? Give that.
Oh, it's hard to remember. It's victortaylor.com.
Okay, .com.
victortaylor.com.
And when they go there,
click on CME TV at the top.
Okay.
At the top up there.
At the top. So let me push for just a second. Why is it on victortaylor.com and not the CMEchurch.com? I'm just asking.
It wasn't available.
It wasn't available.
No.
The domain.
And the domain wasn't available. But I mean, we're certainly open to changing it to whatever it should be. But we started with that and just built it up, and so we kept it. I started it before I was in office.
I got you.
So we just kept it, and we made it. Said, well, let's just use this for purposes of the CME Church, since we have this and it's available. It's easy to remember.
Yeah.
So our online streaming platform features from Jerome Conference, Pastors Conference, the CYYC, Unity Summit, and later to come, our prior, before we had Unity Summit, will be up there as our convocation, the annual convocation.
Yeah.
That you can view unlimited programming, $39.99 a year. Price will increase later as we release more catalog, but more will be added, just like Netflix, right? One DVD used to be $15, and now you can see everything. Tax deductible, funds come to DFI. So the creation of these types of moments, which CME TV is called Life Beyond the Event, right? So people want to go back and they want to see something from a previous Jerome Conference, whatever they don't remember exactly, they can go and search.
How far do you go back? Dr. Rentha Mason asked that question. How far back?
Yeah, I think right now it is, it's ongoing, it's active, by the way. But I think we have about 10 years up there right now. but it's going to go all the way back to at least 2000, 2006. Oh, she wants a link on the CME Church website. We certainly think that that's a great thing, and that should happen. But misunderstanding in terms of what it is, for example, that CME TV does, what CME TV does, people have thought, oh, this is just an expense. No, it's doing several things. First of all, it's saving the church. I think I was calculated as millions of dollars, certainly hundreds of thousands of dollars, because of the lesser expense which is being paid from owning our own equipment and using our people, which are not charging, and we know they're not because we've gotten the quotes for the events, and we can easily find out by getting quotes from these events, so that you can sustain by paying less. Also, right? Even when I talk about C-suite in terms of portfolio or whatever, this is a consistent policy that we have. Pay less if you can. Figure out how to do that. That is the way, actually, CME TV is actually the way that ultimately the convocation got out of this perennial deficit situation. Paying, maybe $120,000 for AV, that CME TV came in and it was $60,000. So rather than being a real expense, it was actually a tremendous savings to Jerome Church and enabled the Jerome Church to get out of the perennial deficit of the annual CME convocation.
Are you all working with the General Conference next year? Will CME TV have a presence there?
I would think it's in the, I'm always in the best interest. Some people say at one time, they said, well, you're just for CME TV. I said, that's true, I am for CME TV, but I'm also for publications. I'm also for the Christian Index. I'm for all things, the missionaries. I'm for all things CME. I always want to see CME Church win at all times. So that's something which I think is often misunderstood, both in terms of the savings and then the monetization that is able to generate to create these memories, life beyond the event, create, capture, and connect is what CME TV has done. And I think that's a tremendous thing that's misunderstood. And I talk about it because it was put, under the Department of Finance and Investment. And I think it's woefully misunderstood that we are actually doing these multiple things at the same time in order to sustain and really ultimately build a better brand for the CME Church.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that and letting us know about that. I know that that's a great resource, and so many people, so many conferences, so many speakers, so many lectures, so many programs. That's going to be an incredible resource. So as we prepare to wind down, let's talk about the future. Let's look ahead. We have celebrated 150 years, and we are, as I say, let me put up my little on the road to Cincinnati. We are headed to Cincinnati next June, July, General Conference. We know we believe we may have an election of Episcopal officers. Some general officers are retiring, and there are people who are running. And so I understand that there is someone in the running for the position that you currently hold. Next year, I'm going to have all of the candidates on to share. But, and I'm not asking you to make a case. I'm not asking you to campaign, but you are currently in that position. And what is the advantage for you right now as you gaze ahead for the future of the CME Church, as our CFO managing our money, the church's money? I'm reminded of a former member who used to say, Pastor, what do they do with our money? And I think that's a fair question for people who aren't able to to see exactly what you all do. Now we have a better understanding, a clear understanding of how you invest, how you distribute, and the whole nine yards. But what lies in the future? What would be the optimal endowment for the CME Church? 7 million is impressive. Okay.
Yes.
But what in your eye would be that? And I guess, and you don't have to, I guess it's making a case. Why should Victor Taylor, Dr. Victor Taylor, remain on as the CFO and the General Secretary of Investments and Finance for the CME Church?
Yeah, Skip, again, thank you for that. That's a great question. So we have the integrity to do what we said we would do. We have the trust that we will put together the right people to carry out the vision and as we've laid it out to the people, and we operate in a transparent and clear manner and in transparency. And then that we have the innovation that we put together. Skip, when we got in office, we're not aware at any time that the CME Church had collected on commissions from the meetings that we have. So we established something known as the International Airport Transportation Agency, IATA. And through that, through at least a couple events and even one for an Episcopal district, we were able to bring in more than $65,000 in. And we're not doing anything different, Skip.
Right.
The points I talked about, we're not doing anything different. This IATA I'm talking about in terms of getting commissions or whatever, we're not doing anything different. But we're coming up with innovative ways in terms of ADP and direct deposit, in terms of our travel management site, where we went from paying $35 to make a reservation to paying $6. In terms of our reimbursement, where checks are getting lost. When I got in office, somebody called me and said, oh, a year ago, a check was lost. It was lost. It was like $3,000. We got in, we sent a check. And I believe it was for $20,000. It was cashed by a different party. So we're just a different party. Of course, we caught it in our audit trail. There's scores of other things like that. I won't bore you with all the dead bodies. But we just have operated on the platform with the people. So the integrity to do what we said, the trust in terms of the people that we put together, the innovation that we have put in. We think we can keep bringing those things forward for the best interest of the CME Church. That's what we have at heart, and that's what we will continue to do and to project that at all times we will act in the best interest of the CME Church. The next time you see that I have acted in a way contrary to the best interest of the CME Church, that will be the first time.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you, your candor, your sharing. I learned a lot today. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I think communication is key. Transparency continues to be important. And I think part of what we want is to know more. We know what's happening with the funds and what's going on, what you're doing, but better communication from something, because while we get the Christian index and we see the accounting, and the reporting, and I know the discipline requires that you make reports, to the College of Bishops and et cetera. Sometimes though, I don't know that what you do on your level trickles down to that sweet little old lady in one of my former churches who used to say, Pastor, what are they doing with the money? and how to answer that in such a manner that she really sees that the CME Church is doing great work. One of the things that Bishop Sylvester Williams said when I had the College of Bishops a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him about the funds collected for these unexpected occurrences, the hurricane, pandemic, that people know that these monies collected are actually being dispersed to those people that are in need.
Right.
Yeah. And that falls, you disperse all monies based on the discipline. And so, that is something that I think is important, because I think somebody said when we understand and know better, we're more willing to share,
do better.
To do better. Yeah, to do better. I think, you've covered a lot. I appreciate it. What I'd like for you to do, as I always close out, I call it matters of the heart. What's on your heart and mind as it relates to our church or your work or things going forward. And I'll give you the last word in this conversation for you to share with us, if you like. And I know
once again, this is a tremendous program. You're doing phenomenal work. I spoke to you recently on something that happened that was unbelievable, where $100 million, right, was leaded.
Yeah.
We won't go into where.
But we're on it. Yeah.
So we're developing partners now that will deliver resources to local church for people for purposes of financial literacy. So we're conducting conversations, national conversations, international, that we started at the beginning of this year. And we're bringing on some of the best people to come on and to discuss with people, because the first time that I read the Wall Street Journal was when I was in graduate school. And so we don't really have this element of institutional memory within us in terms of economy, in terms of financial literacy. And I think it's imperative that we get that type of knowledge. So one of my learned advisors actually sent me that scripture that you put down, Ecclesiastes 7, and she put Ecclesiastes 7, 11, and 12 in the, I think it's in the Message Bible interpretation. Wisdom is better when it's paired with money, especially if you get both while you're still living. Double protection, wisdom, and wealth. Plus the bonus, wisdom energizes its owner. I think it's imperative that we build the brand of the CME Church. Now, I don't drink Coca-Cola, but I'm familiar with the brand. Same thing, most people say, you say F-150, they're familiar with it. It's got something in that's in there. We want that for the CME Church. We think that the CME Church has a goodly heritage. And we want to, again, create and fulfill these models that sustain what is really a great legacy. I say many times to hotels, hey, they're saying, well, what about if you don't pay the bill? I say, well, we've been in business 150 years. Just think about how long they've been in business. So just to build up our brand where we have that type of presence, where we have a command that we can generate both in terms of corporate possibilities, which are becoming much more possible. And I'm working on some of those things for our colleges even now. Corporate and governmental. And I think we can put together things, foundation or something where we're able to take advantage of these types of opportunities, but we must continue to focus and build the brand of CME Church and that positive, historic connection that we have, which is of such great cloud of witnesses.
Well, I think you summed it up, and I don't think anyone would disagree with you that we have to continue to build our brand so people don't ask, well, who are the CMEs? What is a CME? What does the CME do? And I noticed over some of the years, we've had to provide that explanation. They don't quite really understand. Are you related to the AMEs or the AME Zions and that kind of thing? So we can't do enough in a very positive way to build up our brand. Well, Dr. Victor Taylor, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. You know, you are always welcome. And perhaps I'll have you back on before the general conference as we get close. And as I said, I'll have all of the candidates who are running for general office and the episcopacy on throughout the year, so we can get a chance to hear various voices and get clarity and get some understanding on this Sunday afternoon. Again, next Sunday, I'll sit down with these 4 powerful sisters who have offered themselves for the episcopacy. And I'm looking forward. And we're not just talking about women issues. Okay, let me be real clear. Okay. We're talking about issues that impact the church and, of course, the brothers as well. But thank you, Victor. Appreciate you and to your team. And you take care. Blessings to you and yours. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're willing to come on as much as it takes for transparency and sunshine.
Absolutely. Well, you know, you have that open invitation. I'm looking forward to having Tyrone. Tyrone, I think, is supposed to be on a vacation this weekend. That's what he told me.
That's what he told me.
So we'll see. But I am looking forward to having him on too sometime soon. But take care of yourself. Thank you all for tuning in. There we go. Thank you all for tuning in. And I'm going to close out with the new chair of the College of Bishops, Bishop James B. Walker, in an excerpt from his recent address. God bless you all.
God meets Moses on Mount Horeb, not in the valley. God meets Moses on Mount Horeb, not in the plains. God meets Moses on the mountain. God says to Moses, I need you to have an elevated view of what I'm asking you. I need you to deal with a higher plane. I need you to deal with next level insight. The more Moses said what he couldn't do, the more God reveals what he can do. And God says, oh no, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it through you. God is revealing. Oh, hallelujah, somebody. Amen. God is doing what discipleship always does. God is doing what evangelism always does. God is taking Moses like we must take people with evangelism and discipleship. We must show folk the best in themselves. We must reveal to people that regardless of what the world says about you or how the world labels you, you are a child of the King. Can somebody pray with me for just a little while? Finally, I'm on my last point. Finally, the last strategic message that we receive from the mountain is this. Amen. Is that the mountains enable us to see our mission. The mountains enable us to see our mission. 65, and I'm climbing Mount Talbot, and I get to the top. And when I get to the top, I feel all right. But I see a tower at the top. Amen. I see what they call the Hublin Tower. And that's about 4 or 5 stories and no elevator. Amen. Now I have the choice to go to the top or to have climbed the mountain and not reach the pinnacle. So I said, I can't climb and not go to the pinnacle. So I climbed those stairs to the very top of Hubline Tower. And man, in that tower, it was just me all by myself. And church, I was feeling wonderful. The scenic view and nobody but Bishop Walker. And then I heard the click-clack of little feet. And I knew, amen, a family was coming up the stairs. And I said, okay, you're going to have to share the space, amen. And when the family came up the stairs, it was a father with a little girl, and instead of being quiet, instead of being all mannerable, she started shouting as soon as she reached the tower. And I said to myself, hey, excuse the expression, I said, ain't no Jesus in this, man. But after that little girl shouted, I heard her words. She said, Daddy, Daddy, I see the world.